Hello and welcome to Coffee with Dr. Carla. I'm Dr. Carla. This is Lori Smith, and we are so glad that you're here with us. Our goal is to talk about mental health related issues and to end the stigma surrounding them. So, Lori, you and I made the decision to tackle an interesting topic today.
We did.
We are going to talk about COVID. And before you all just turn this off because you're not sure what we're going to say, we do have opinions, but we're not going to express our opinions about COVID and all that other stuff. What we are going to talk about is the collective trauma that's going to happen, or that has been happening around COVID. Because regardless of where you stand in all of this, the reality of it is there is this collective trauma that is happening. And as therapists, it's interesting because we are experiencing the trauma along with the people who we are helping with, and so it makes for an interesting dynamic. So today we're going to just talk about some of the different things that we've been noticing. So I'm curious, you and I both have a pretty decent caseload. We do see quite a number of clients, especially ones who are dealing with trauma. What are some of the patterns that you're seeing in regards to COVID?
So with regards to COVID, with people who have come in presenting with historical trauma, either an assault or other kinds of trauma in their family, COVID has kind of lifted the floor on it and has added another layer.
Yeah.
It really has, it's in the air. We all are thinking about our mortality different. Everybody knows somebody who's had it. And most people know somebody who's had it badly.
Yeah.
It just, because the nature of trauma is to, it's the definition of trauma is to fear that you are going to die, that your physical integrity is at stake. Having that kind of as the constant hum now makes it difficult. And has set people back and has increased anxiety.
Yeah. And the reality of it is, again, despite your beliefs about it, the one thing I think we all can agree on is that we don't really know enough about it to be able to predict it, to truly be able to get a grasp on it. Because I know for myself, every time I hear about somebody who has COVID, they present with these symptoms, and then I hear somebody else who presents with these symptoms, and then these symptoms, and so there's really not a constant. In the beginning, we thought there was, but what we've learned now is that there isn't a constant. And so that too adds to the unease of living during these last couple of years, and it doesn't look like it's going away.
Absolutely. And when we think about not just trauma, but anxiety, and part of an anxiety disorder is to be very uncomfortable, for lack of a better word, and understating it, and not knowing what to expect. Somebody with an anxiety disorder might read up on the symptoms and read up on ways to prevent getting it, and then they hear about the new thing.
Yeah.
Or the numbers constantly changing, and it just accelerates and exacerbates it and deepens the anxiety. And then social media, turning on the television, the maps, the ubiquitous maps, change and constantly change, and people can't find it hard to get their footing again.
Right. And then we also know that Dr. Google doesn't always present us with real facts.
Correct.
So that's hard too.
Exactly.
I know people end up going down rabbit holes and whatnot.
Exactly. I mean, we talked about it. You mentioned it. There's this starting to appear in the literature, COVID anxiety.
Yeah.
So people who previously lived with anxiety, maybe it's narrowed to COVID, or that's become a place they could focus it, or people who didn't live with anxiety disorders before, all across the spectrum, are developing anxiety disorders.
Right. Right. And people who truly have COVID anxiety, syndrome disorder, whatever, it's it's not in the DSM yet.
Right,
but
right.
But anyhow, it is very phobic like. The problem is it's not necessarily there's things that are unrealistic about the fears, but there are some things that are very realistic about the fears.
Absolutely.
So that's a tricky one. But it at the end of the day, it stops people from engaging in life.
Right.
And therein lies, the true trauma. Yeah.
And among that group of people, oftentimes it's folks who would have never thought to reach out to a mental health professional. And
Right.
so they're battling, they know something's not right, they're terrified of getting COVID, they're terrified of dying, and then there's the pre-existing stigma, so to speak, of being terrified to reach out to ask for help.
Right.
Because now they're crazy.
Right. So, I mean, we probably could talk about this for hours. And I'm sure that people could share all sorts of stories with us. And in fact, if you do have a story, share it with us,
Please
because it's always good to speak about these things, bring it out of, the dark and into the light. But I mean, other than that, what kind of things would you recommend to help people, I'm going to say, manage this? Because, I don't want people to think they have to get over this fear, because there's
real.
There's a very realistic component to this. So, but what are some ways of managing it that you would suggest to, say, clients or our audience?
Sure. I mean, the first thing that I've recommended is to limit external exposure to the numbers and social media and the constant things, and to kind of take oneself off of the 10 sites somebody goes to, or the constant checking, and maybe limit it to once a week, or if for folks who need to, once a day.
Right.
One source, a reliable source, the same source, so that the information they're getting over time. So that's one thing. The other is to really stay engaged with, as much as possible, with like-minded people.
Right.
Get out, take a walk, put on a mask if it's a fear.
Sure.
And take a walk. Do it at a time of day when a lot of people aren't out.
Right.
And to exercise, eat properly, all the things, the wisdom, the things that really are bedrock for good mental health anyway. And then certainly, even if it's just a brief time and it's new, reach out to a therapist.
Yeah.
Talk to somebody about it. Learn some strategies. Learn some meditation or centering techniques.
Yeah. And I'm sure that in the midst of all of this, many people are probably thinking, okay, well, those sound great, but I am so overwhelmed by this. I'm becoming paralyzed, and we recognize that. And you are not alone. I mean, not that inherently helps you, this exact moment, but the reality is you're not alone, and many people are finding themselves paralyzed by this fear and the uncertainty that COVID brings. But speaking it out loud, sharing it with somebody, if it's not a therapist, maybe it's clergy, maybe it's a trusted friend or a mentor, just so that you can have some place to feel safe and supported, and in control of how your mind is thinking, right? It's easy to say, just worry about the things you can control, but again, if you're in panic or you're in that really intense fear, that's really hard to do.
Absolutely.
Right. And unless you have some form of help, you probably are not going to be able to conquer that, which is which is tough, right?
Very tough, and can lead to withdrawal, which then can pile on all the secondary kinds of things like depression and other kinds of phobias and agoraphobia and things like that.
And the other thing I was thinking too is that, okay, we're saying reach out to, in our case, we're suggesting a therapist, a counselor, social worker, psychologist, whatever the case may be. And I know traditionally we think about going into their office, but if you are having this heightened anxiety, this kind of paralyzing fear because of COVID, the last thing you want to do is go out and into someone's office. And I will say the one blessing that this pandemic brought on was the capacity to do telehealth.
Absolutely. And to do telehealth either where we're not seeing each other and we're talking on a phone, or to talk on a video platform. And one of the really important things for therapists is that we know that those are safe and that they're protected, and there are a number of HIPAA compliant
Right.
platforms that we use, that others use, so that we can maintain the sanctity
Right.
and the confidentiality of the relationship.
Right. And
Absolutely.
while they're not, they're not the same as being face to
They're
face.
not.
But when you have that fear, that connection is better than no connection at all.
Yep.
So, I hope that the little bit we talked about is enough to get somebody thinking.
Right.
And so, again, you've got some stories. Share with us below. You want more information? Give us a ring. We're happy to help you out in any way possible. So remember, you can change your thoughts, discover your potential, and transform your life by focusing on your overall well-being. So until next time, continue working on being the best you possible. Bye.
Bye.